get this party started. All right. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We have a special edition today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have special edition Scale to Wealth call with Candace Decker. And Candace, my screen's not sharing. Give it just a second. All right, there we go. Candace is a private client of Brett's. She has been with us in the Be Wealthy Mastermind since February. And so Brett asked if Candace and I could spend a little bit of time together and sharing with you all some of the great successes that Candace has had in the short time she's been with us, what she's implemented, what it looks like, and sharing with us how she's just a total badass and is absolutely crushing it. So Candace, with that, I would love for you to start off by just sharing with us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, what businesses you've been involved with initially, what market you're in, and kind of what your world looks like today.
Cool. Well, first off, thank you so much for the introduction. You're too kind. I'm located in Southwest Florida, so Gulf side, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Naples area. I'm sure a lot of you guys have vacationed here at some point. I've been in real estate for the last 10 years as a single agent for 7 of those. And my husband and I, we bought our first flip together before we were actually married about 10 years ago. So single agent, real estate agent, and then I would call us hobby flippers. We flipped probably 2 to 3 a year until we met Brett and started working with Be Wealthy back in February. And for the last 3 years, I've been building my real estate team here in Southwest Florida.
Awesome. I think that story relates a lot to most people when they enter into our Be Wealthy world, right? So we always talk about 2 tracks. You have your operating business track over here, which is your real estate business and your retail real estate team. And we tend to be hobbyists when it comes to investing initially. And so with that, you're really similar to most people who come into our world. And so February hits, right? What does your retail real estate team look like at that point?
So last year we did 60 million. And then we began ramping up recruiting and standards and keyword standards. And so this year we're on track for 100 million.
Awesome. So in February, you're looking back at the year before, about 60 million, a good sized team. What did those leverage points look like? Were you still in production at that point?
Yes. So all last year and then the beginning of this year, I was a listing agent and then had agents working with buyers. And then up until February was the point where we talked to Brett and it was like, get out of production because you could be doing much more, if you can leverage the team.
Awesome. So I want to pause just at a point here. As I mentioned, I think a lot of our members are really, really similar to you when they first come in. They have a kick-ass business, and now you've done 3 or 4 critical things in the past 6 months that have changed the trajectory of really your and Ben's whole world. So with that, if y'all have questions as we start climbing into the 3 or 4 specific things that Candace has done, feel free to unmute yourself. This is definitely a live conversation. So to unmute yourself and chime in with any questions you have. She's an open book, and we would be remiss to not take the opportunity to ask away. So you start working with us in February. You start with Be Wealthy in February. And what was the first thing that you did that made a huge impact for you?
So right after I joined, because we joined in February, and then I went to Phoenix in early March. And the big thing that I took away was the pro forma that Brett had shared with us. And I showed you this yesterday. So I created my own pro forma that lays out all of the businesses and the vision for the next 5 years. And this sits next to me every single day so that when I come into the office, I can I can view it. Because I think for me, I was getting very caught up in the day-to-day operations, and I wasn't looking at the big picture stuff. And I really realized, like, if I just continue what I call like to be in the muck of things every day, getting tied down in like the gotta minutes and the, oh, I've got to answer that email, I've got to pay this bill, I've got to do this, like we get really bogged down. I just really wanted to just focus on growing these aspects of each business.
Sure. It's so funny that you brought up that we went over the pro forma at the mastermind, because when I look back at the content that was covered at that mastermind, yes, the pro forma was in there, but for you to take that one specific piece and to leverage it to create massive change is so interesting, because I think we probably only spent maybe 15 minutes on the pro forma, but for it to be the catalyst to create such massive change for you, it just shows you take something and implement it, what a difference it can make. So let's talk about the difference. So you say the businesses. Tell me a little bit about what sits on that pro forma from a business growth standpoint.
So I have my retail team, which I'm looking to add expansion teams like immediately. I have a huge map actually sitting above me right now. So I can actually visualize like where we could take this. So I realized like visualizations are so important. I've got to be able to look at this stuff every single day. So for us, the retail team, the expansions, and then our flipping business, which again, it was always looked at as like, let's just do is, you know, if we find them, that's great. Well, how can we operationalize this with systems in place so that let's do 20 this year. Okay, what is that going to take to get to 20? We have to have these specific lead pillars set up, and we have to have action plans around each lead pillar. So we added flips, and then wholesaling, which we're at the very, very beginning stages of, and then starting our JV title. That was another one. And then now our hard money lending, which will be the next step. So I've got the pro forma, and then actually somebody shared this with me in Salt Lake or Park City. I have this. So we all have org charts for our organization, for our staff, but what about an org chart for all of your businesses? So like I forget that I have 10 LLCs, right? Like we have all of these things, but we forget about them because we're so busy, right? We've got this LLC for this rental property, and this for our short-term holdings, and this for our hard money lending. But like, again, that visualization for me is so big right now. That's why I love sharing this, is having that org chart for the business. So yeah, so those are the main on the pro forma right now. And then I would like to add mortgage and insurance as we go in the next 2 to 3 years. So Phyllis just asked where I'm located. I'm in Southwest Florida, Fort Myers.
One of the things that's so interesting with that is how you structured it. Well, with what you verbally just said, follows that whole methodology that we talk about in Be Wealthy, where it's first have that operating business, and then that initial business. You said it so well the other day on the phone when we were talking. The operating business, or your retail real estate business, you view it, you used a really cool analogy. Can you kind of go over that a little bit again?
Yeah, so you and I were talking about all of the businesses and ancillary service businesses that you can create. And I look at the retail team as that foundation. So if we like look at a house, we're looking at the slab, the concrete slab, right? That's the foundation of all of these other businesses that we can build off of. But I think that's why it's so important that we grow the retail team, because that's what does drive the opportunity for more flips and wholesales. And it drives the opportunity for your ancillaries like mortgage and title. But we've got to have that production. And for me as well, with recruiting at my brokerage, that's another business, but I attract people through production. So when I look at it, it's like the answer always points to production, and then everything else seems to grow from there. And I feel like the lessons I've learned in building my team in the last 3 years, now I've taken those and I'm applying it to the other businesses too. So it's like, it just always comes back to, that's the foundation.
Totally. You know, it's so Candace, one thing you may not know about me is I come up with terrible analogies, but it really helps my thought process. And while you were talking, I was thinking that your retail real estate business is really the slab, the foundation. And then because of that opportunity, we can build walls, right? And then the walls are those ancillary businesses that help us to go faster or higher in this example. So then you have, whether it be the wholesale business or the mortgage, title, all of those different pieces are kind of the walls. And then the wealth component, when we start building the passive income that we can through wealth creation, it's kind of that roof, right? And it sits on top of it all. But how you laid it out in when you were describing the pro forma was so interesting because you followed that exact same methodology. It was first the operating business. I want to continue to grow that. Laying on top of that will be the additional ancillary business opportunities. And then laying on top of that will be the additional wealth opportunities. And it's so funny, right away you said, and then it will be the hard money, right? So you've already identified what's my first short-term investment opportunity. So very cool. I absolutely love it. So if you guys have not created a pro forma, we're going to go ahead and drop that in the chat box in just a little bit. The sample one that Brett provided, it'd be a really good idea. And what Brett wanted me to share with y'all was getting that actually created and spending the time to lay it out, both on the pro forma side and that organizational chart's awesome. For your businesses, you should have both of those. We'll share our samples in just a few minutes. But Candace, the implementation of that's fantastic. So,
well, what I loved is that you guys took months to make it, and then you just gave it to us, and it took me like an hour to plug in all the numbers. So thank you for that. You guys did all the heavy lifting. I did the easy part.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. When we see the implementation of it, it just, man, it is so fun to create tools for y'all that we're currently using and then formalize them for y'all. So good deal. So you come back, you now lay out this pro forma and you need to take massive action in order to execute said pro forma. So where do we go from here? You're in production currently. You have some strong leverage points on the operations side, but what do we do from here? How do we get the acceleration?
Yeah. So when it came to getting out of production, and I know for myself, like, you know, and I think a lot of us, we have egos because we think we're really, really good at what we do as real estate agents. So I was like, how am I going to give this up? Because I'm so good at prospecting. I'm so good at conversion on listing appointments. How could I ever hand this off and trust this with anybody else? So what I did was I reached out to all the agents on my team, and I asked them if they wanted to interview for the position to be on the listing team. So I had five hand raisers, and I took my listing presentation and I wrote it out word for word as a script, exactly how I wanted it done. We already had the presentation in writing. So I gave it to them and I said, practice like crazy. And in a week and a half, we are going to sit down and you're going to present this to me. And they did it better than I did it, better than I could ever do it. They were so skilled and so good. And I realized, like, wow, I'm actually really not that good at this. They're way better. So if you think that like people can't do it better, won't do it better, like just give the opportunity, because you might be really, really surprised. So now I have 4 incredible agents who can go out on like this and go to a listing presentation. So that was very eye-opening to me.
The point of, you know, that you bring up of we're real estate agents, so we think, and naturally we've built everything from the ground up. So we're the hustlers, right? We're like, no one can do it better than me. But to open it up, that's incredible. Did they have any issues as far as conversion rates, anything of that nature that made you go, ooh, I'm second guessing this?
Nope. Absolutely not. And you know what? Because I was so scattered and had my hands in so many different buckets, they're so much more focused because that's all they're doing, right? They're only preparing for the appointment, and they're getting in the right mindset, and they're going in and they're practicing. I didn't have time for that. So I was going in very unprepared. And I wasn't practicing. I wasn't doing all the right things, right? I was doing all the wrong things. So actually our conversion is probably much better than it was. We're taking more listings just because I didn't have the time. And Shoshana just asked who is setting the appointments. So we have an ISA who does set the appointments and pre-qualifies the sellers for us.
Got it. And then how many people are you away from taking that job back?
Like how many agents?
Like how many people would have to freak out and walk out the door or win the lottery, either way?
12. Like 12 solid people that I would, 12.
So if someone was nervous, or if I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I had a conversation the other day with another client of ours who was considering bringing on one person to take the listings. If you were giving some advice to people trying to get out of production, would you say, hey, let's go ahead and train 4 or 5 people? Or would you say, let's bring 1 or 2? It seemed to work really well for you this way. What advice do you have?
So I took the agent who was at first, I had him taking a couple of listings if I wasn't busy. So he would come on, this was before I interviewed everybody. He came to a couple appointments with me, saw how I did it. Then I would let him do it and I would go with, but watch him. And then I let him go. But I don't think you can only have one, right? Because that person can leave. And what I've learned with training is you always want to have at least 2 people training at once. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time and resources. It's so much easier to train 4 people at once, right? So I guess if that's the only option is to train 1, but I would open the opportunity and let them earn it. Because it's an earned position. It's not a given position. And so I felt like with the interview process that they took it very seriously and they knew that there was only a couple of slots, and these guys went all out, all out.
Well, they were applying for a job. I think, whether it's bringing someone in from the outside or meaning a new agent or a new wholesale person, or whether it's moving someone into a new position within the organization, flipping that power dynamic of, oh, please come work for us. Our value proposition is great, to you have to apply for the position. Flipping that script makes a big difference, especially in our industry.
Yes, for sure.
We didn't talk about this the other day, but now I'm curious. You are going to be starting to build out a wholesale business. So knowing that you don't necessarily want to go back into the listing side, how do you see the wholesale side being built and creating leverage for yourself there?
So right now, that same agent that I trained to go to listings for me, he is currently, if we have an opportunity, he's trained and he can go. Like on this Saturday, I was out of town and someone was ready for a cash offer. I sent him, and I know we're supposed to find unlicensed people, but right now I trust him and I know he can just go do it. So as soon as we ramp up lead gen, then I'll go out, and I saw Kobe on this call a few minutes ago. I learned so much from him in Park City about just going and finding multiple agent or people and bringing them on. So that's the plan. I've implemented a little bit slower than I wanted to, but I also want to make sure that we're spending money in the right places on lead gen. So that's what we're working with Brett on right now, is some test markets, and then we'll be ready to go.
Perfect. I just think it's so interesting because it's the same kind of build out that you did on the retail side. And we look at them so often as completely different business lines. Oh, the people are different. The process is different. The product is different, but it really does mirror. So I wanted to pick your brain on that and see kind of what your thought was. Shoshana had one more question. Is the share, or I think she's saying the split, is the share or the split for the listings lower for the agent?
It's a 30-70 split. They get 30, we get 70.
Perfect. And on the buy side, just out of curiosity, is that the same?
On the buy side, without an ISA, it's 45-55, 45 to the agent, 55 to the team. And there's a 10% override for ISA booked appointments.
Awesome. So just to recap, Candace, you joined the mastermind in February. You come out in March, spend 2 days with us. Obviously, the fire hose goes and you leave and immediately go create your pro forma. Once you create your pro forma, which shows all of your different business lines, you then go and say, okay, to execute this, I've got to get some time back and start working more on the business. Get yourself out of the production side. And so what does your life look like today? Or what does your work life look like? Meaning, what does your day-to-day currently look like?
Yeah, so actually my day-to-day looks so much different now because when I went back and I realized like I need a Caitlin, right? We all want a Caitlin in our lives. Like I think we can all agree to have that. We're like, yeah, I need a Caitlin. So I actually did some rearranging and structure, and I believe that I have my Caitlin. And she was there the whole time, but she was really second in command. So we made some adjustments, as hard as that was to, go into the org chart and start messing with it. But we've got our person, and I believe she can help build all of these businesses out, because I can't do it alone. And my husband can't do it. Like we can't do it alone. We are great at the big picture thing, but these details are not our strong suit. So, we need an implementer and an executor and a leader who I can take this org chart to and say, hey, I want you to help us build out all of these businesses. And so I think the key is finding the right people. Whether you're, and if you guys have read the book Rocket Fuel, it's one of my favorite books, but like you're either the visionary or you're the integrator. We're not, you can't really be both or be really good at being both. So I really think it's finding the right people, and that's going to get you to where you want to go 100 times faster. Like I look at this, I'm like, I'm going to get there so much faster because I have my person. Sure.
That makes a ton of sense. It's tough too, because that tends to be one of the main sticking points for us, right? It's and I believe it's because it's indoctrinated into, we have to hustle, we have to do it all, right? In this industry. When you first start, that typically is the case, right? And so then you consistently stay in I'll call it like the protector of things, where you have to hold it all and it has to revolve around you. If it doesn't, it'll fall apart. And so to then have that trust to say, that's not true. That's just your own myth in your head. If you actually start leveraging out and have systems and models, it does work really well.
Right. And I think like for me, I had in the last couple of years, I had people who maybe were the right people in the right roles at the time, but as we leveled up, they were no longer the right people. And we have to recognize in that moment, this is not the person in this right role. Maybe they're better in a different role, but they're not right in this role to get me to the next level. And I think a lot of us keep people in those spots because we're friends and we love them and we don't want to hurt their feelings, but like, this is business and we want to win, and you need to have the right people in the right seats to do that. So, yes. I've done quite a bit of firing, quite a bit of, changing roles and moving people around. But like, once you're in that space of like, everyone's in the right spot and everyone's super happy, things like take off. Like in the last couple of weeks, like we've done more in the last month than we've done in maybe 6 months because everyone's in the right spot.
Wow. Congratulations. That's restructuring is not easy. I know for all of us that read the High Growth Handbook before the last mastermind and what we went over in there, it is something that with explosive and rapid growth like you're experiencing, it has to happen more often than we would like, but it's also the threshold that allows us to burst through.
And I know you and I were talking a little bit about this yesterday, and I think this is really important, because I think a lot of us are, like, for me, I was worried about, like, well, what if this person is not in the right role, and how do I even have that conversation? It's not an easy conversation to have, right? Like we all have that person where, like, they're not really that great at what they do, but they get it done and they're good enough. Like, are those the people you want in that seat? Like, not really, right? But like, we're so busy, we don't know what else to do. Do we let them go? Do we, like, what do we do with them? So I sat down all of my operations people a month and a half ago, and I said, what makes you happy? Like, do you feel like you are in the right spot right now? And it wasn't like, I don't think you're in the right spot. It's an open-ended, like, how do you feel? Like, are you happy in this role? And like, what I found is my director of operations told me, I'm actually kind of bored because our ops manager is like doing everything. I'm like, well, that's really interesting. Like, what do you love to do? I love the marketing end. I love recruiting. I like this. I'm like, cool, let's make you the director of that and go build that out, right? And she's so happy. And now my director of operations is like, the new one is like now that she knows she can do whatever, like she's
What's
in
her
charge.
name? You didn't tell me.
She's taking it to the next level. So like, just having those conversations can go such a long way, and really have people like, I had a key person in my company who was bored. Like, that's not good. And I would have never known if I wouldn't have asked.
Yeah.
So we just got to have those meetings.
I think the way that you phrased it also makes a big difference, right? It's that, I think it's the Peter principle, where you promote someone because they succeeded in their previous role. Now they go into the new role, and maybe I don't know the softer way to say this, they've been promoted to incompetency. And so then you have to have the conversation with them to maneuver it down. I love that you came from it of what makes you guys happy, in order to help reposition people within their spots. And by removing one person and putting them in their passion zone, you let another person fly, which is awesome. James says there's a great book that touches on the topic that Candace is discussing. It's called The Dichotomy of Leadership, by Jocko. That's a great book if y'all haven't read that one yet. So come home from the mastermind, you do the pro forma, you lay it out, then you say, I've got to get out of production. You get yourself out of production. Then you look at your operations business and say, the operations side, and say, based on where I'm going, is everyone in the right seat on the bus? And it was no. So you had everyone hop out of the bus, run around it a couple times, and then get back in the right seats. So now everybody's in the right seats, and you're able to focus on the business more. And you had a pretty massive change in your actual personal net worth based upon starting to track it. So walk us through that, because all of those three things that we've discussed so far were the underlying pieces that a lot of people have trouble executing in order to get the result that you are about to share with us. So I wanted to take us through what those steps looked like, and that, yeah, there was pain at times, but now for what gain? Walk us through that.
So the other big piece was coming back from Phoenix and doing the net worth tracker. When I was in Phoenix, I didn't even know what my net worth was. I hadn't even put my assets and liabilities on paper. You know, I'm just like paying bills and like, I don't know, we were winging it. And so I was like, wow, okay, well, and for us, like when we're, you know, our cash on hand is like a huge roller coaster in this business, right? Because you're buying properties and you're selling, and it's moving all over. So for me, it's like, I just was looking at what was in the bank and making decisions on that, which is the worst possible thing you could ever do. So we put that together, and we actually just updated ours yesterday, because we do it every single month. And I was looking from February, when we got into coaching, until now, that our net worth has increased by 48%. Just crazy.
So crazy.
Yeah. And a big piece of that, I feel like, is leveraging, like having the right people in the operating businesses to handle the day-to-day. And then for me to have like headspace to actually think, and not just like running around to listing appointments and being here and there. Like, I actually am like more thoughtful of my time so that I can think. And we had some pretty big, we had a big commercial deal that we did a couple of months ago. And now we have another one that's on the market now, ready to be sold. But I just think if I would have been like in that muck that I talk about, of like the day to day, I wouldn't find these other opportunities, right? I wouldn't go seek more knowledge, and I wouldn't be able to put the pieces together if I was just in the day to day. So I think just clearing that out has given me the ability to be more thoughtful of the investments and the networking that I've been doing. So I think that's a big part of it.
I completely agree with you. And I think that sprint, that 6-month sprint of going from in the muck where you are today can be incredibly daunting or scary at times. But I want to commend you on the rapid execution of that process is pretty incredible. And Candace, 48% increase in your net worth.
Yeah.
In 6 months.
Yeah.
Pretty gangster, my friend.
So I think for us is just like looking at things on paper. You know, I know it sounds just like so silly, but reviewing it every single month and having, you know, like having those goals of, okay, we want to do 20 flips this year. We're not just going to say, oh, well, if we find one, we'll do it. But just like we do in our retail team, having those same goals, same standards. I think that's what's pushed us a lot further. And also being in this group and seeing what everyone else is doing. And when I'm in the room with everyone, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to do more. I've got to, like, this room is so big and I'm so small, and I love that. And just listening to everything that Brett says. And I look at like the lineage of him being mentored by Gary, and then now he's mentoring us, like the amount of knowledge that he has. And it's like, he did it, why can't we do it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's making it a lot easier on us by just giving us everything.
Well, you're doing the actual work, which is the hardest part. One of the, Brett got into, or Brett's passion point of why he started working on Be Wealthy and Scale to Wealth is exactly the journey that you just went through. So most retail real estate agents and real estate business owners that he talked to, whether it was on the investment side or the wholesale side, on the wholesale side or the retail side, all were focused and in the muck, right? And so growth, when you're in a brokerage house, right, they're constantly just going to help to supply the tools to grow that business because that's the business they're in. So most of us spent all of this time really focusing on just the operating business, and we're service providers versus taking some of our time, some of our energy, some of our resources, and start allocating a real plan toward building wealth so that we didn't turn around 25 years from now, 15 years from now, 10 years from now, and you're still hustling to find that next listing appointment. It really is a huge passion of his. And for him, the reason that he really wanted to spotlight you was someone can make that huge difference in a matter of 6 months. And now the trajectory of your and Ben's whole world with all of your businesses is going to look so incredibly different because of those 6 months. So well done, my friend.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you give us all something to strive for. So I'd love to open it up for Q&A. Kim did say she missed the splits. I think on your list side, what were they again?
So on the list side, it is 30-70. So 30 to the agent, 70 to the team. And then on the buy side, it's 45 to the agent, 55 to the team. ISA set is 35% to the agent, 55 to the team.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, 65 to the team.
Okay. And then for y'all who may have not completed your wealth plan and your personal balance sheet, the first video it's the second video in guides under Tuesday's wealth building calls. Brett has a great video on it that explains how to build out your wealth plan. And that spreadsheet also has your personal balance sheet. one of the biggest indicators that we've seen for success, not only personally for us, but also for all of y'all, is to be doing your personal balance sheet the first of every month, just to make sure that you see as your net worth goes up or sometimes goes down, you see what those decisions, how it impacts your world, and it can help to motivate you in the right direction. So definitely take a look at that. We did plop the Performa spreadsheet into the chat box, but I know y'all have some questions for Candace. I know Kobe Socher specifically will have some questions. Kobe's always the first to ask.
Okay.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Who's
On your ISA side, talk to us like through that, because we've gone through multiple ISAs over the years, and I'm always putting somebody who I feel like is probably not qualified enough to speak to a high level client. And so I'm just wondering like where those people came from. Are they licensed, and like how have you been able to retain them and keep them in that role?
Yeah, so I only have one ISA, so I want to build out a future department as we do our expansion. But as of right now, because of our lead pillars, it makes sense just to have one. So she was actually a brand new agent, and we did a bracket challenge in our office. So like, your NCAA bracket, and we did mock buyers consultations. And then the team would all watched it, and then they would vote on everyone until they got to the championship. And she was so good, and I needed an ISA. And I know like you're not always supposed to rob your agent side, but I really felt like she was the right person, because she's very, very structured too. And so we moved her from agent, she's brand new licensed agent, moved her over to that role.
Gotcha.
But
And
I do think that
what your pay structure is 10% per deal, plus is there a minimum?
she makes $25 an appointment, 5% at closing, and then a $25,000 salary. So the team retains an extra 5%.
What's your average price point?
$475.
Gotcha.
Candace, how are you?
Good.
Good. So I heard you speak a little bit in the middle as far as running around crazy, listing appointments and everything else. You kind of described my life over the last couple of years. Now it started to smooth out because I have an ops manager in training and a sales director. So it has smoothed, but I'm curious, where you seen that big push where you're able to get clarity, time to yourself, focus? What is there like one position you filled where you saw definite traction open up, or was it multiple things?
So I think it's, like our business are always in stages, right? It kind of like looks like this. And my team's relatively new because we moved here about 3 years ago. So last year I had an assistant who was amazing, and I promoted her up. I was like, you're gonna be my integrator and you're gonna build all this out. Go. Like just giving her the ability to like, hey, I need this done, but like I don't really care how. So I let her go and do her thing. And then I did bring on a sales manager right away who built out the processes that we needed. Now last year I ended up letting him go be an agent again. It just wasn't the right fit. So we found somebody else on the team to take over team accountability. But, just finding the person that you can just throw all that stuff to and be like, hey, I just need you to figure it out. Because for me, I would sit like for an hour and a half and show somebody something. Like, I don't want to do that. Just go, like everyone on my team knows, just Google it, like Google that shit. Because you know what, I'm gonna Google it and I'm gonna tell you. So let's save ourselves that time. Just Google it. And then when I rearranged everybody this last month, and Liz, who I call my Caitlin, here, she thinks of things before I do. Or like if I told her a week ago that we wanted to do expansions, she's gone for the whole week and just like built it all out. So, and sometimes like you might think you have the right person, like I was saying, but maybe they really aren't. Maybe they'll help you get here, but they're not going to get you here. So just recognizing that, like, yeah, they might be good in the moment, but like maybe they're just not the right fit. Could they move over somewhere else? Maybe.
Yeah, just, so what you're saying is having them for that moment, but they're not forever in the business, and keeping your eye out for future talent.
Correct. And is, how many operations people do you have?
I have one in training right now.
One in training. Okay. So you're probably like last year I had one in training as well. And then once she built some stuff out, we produced more, we brought on the next person. Right. So it's a gradual thing. And maybe she will grow with you.
Gotcha.
Right. But and I know Caitlin and I were talking about this is you know, once you start bringing these people on, you're going to see too, like some people are going to supersede, like your next person might bulldoze over the person you have now. And maybe they're meant to be at a higher level.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it sounds like she's new. So, and by the way, if you need help on that, like I can share some of our stuff with you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one of the things that I really like that you're sharing, Candace, also, if we go back to the high growth handbook, it's really think 18 months out and who you're hiring, right? So the hire today, and also think about that each time you're moving people around. You're not hiring for the same person who can run your business at $20 million is totally different than the person who can run 10 expansion locations and you know, a $400 million team. It's going to look very different. Now, could that person grow and evolve with you? Sure. But if they're not, it is time to probably maneuver some things around.
And I think a big mistake I made was leaving people for too long, even assistants. Like I went through, I don't know, my first year here, so that's 2 years ago, I probably went through 4 assistants in a year. Like, that's okay. It's just the way it happened. It didn't find the right fit. Eventually you will. It's like you have to kiss so many frogs to get your prince or your princess. So it's like, that's okay.
Yep. The one thing I do want to share is if you are an ops person and you're on this call and you want some of those skills to help yourself grow and maybe drop off some of the assistant and just be the executive instead of the executive assistant, jump on our Monday calls, but keep coming on these calls. Keep coming Monday through Friday on all the calls that your CEOs are on, because the more you hear what they're learning, way they want to grow, what they're looking to do, the faster you're going to be able to move. So I commend y'all for being on here and growing. And if you're a CEO and you want your ops people on here so they can see and grow, get them on here. This is for you and your entire business. So we certainly encourage that. Cool. What other questions do y'all have? Candace, you not only crushed it over the last 6 months, you crushed it over the last 43 minutes. You were absolutely fantastic. And we are so excited to continue to watch you and Ben just absolutely crush it. So on behalf of Brett, I want to thank you for being here today. We had a little different format today instead of the normal submit your deals. So I think Johnny's the only other one I still need to get scheduled with Brett to go over your deal. But Johnny, I'll be sure to get that done. We'll be back to normal structure next week for submit your deal. So if you have one in the running, bring it to us and we will be happy to dive into it. And Candace, thank you so much. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Bye guys. Everyone have a
Thanks. It was awesome. Bye.
Bye.